There's just I don't think Dracula Flow is ever gonna get old for me. That shit, like if you find the right turn of phrase to say in that silly ass voice, Google called me a Gemini, but that shit wasn't locked down. Ah, got
Hello,
me
everyone,
moving
and
like
welcome.
French Montana.
Uh,
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Jams and Tea podcast, where we spin the jams and spill the tea. And today, we're coming at you with some fresh, hot Dracula Flow bars and two new reviews for two new records. We are going to be talking about the long-awaited sophomore album of Baby Keem, and we are going to be talking about the new album from one of my favorite fucking bands in the entire world. In case you didn't guess from me never shutting up about them, it's Converge. We're going to be talking today about Casino and Love Is Not Enough. Let's kick things off today by talking about Converge. Converge are a legendary Massachusetts metalcore, mathcore, hardcore punk, post-hardcore, every hardcore you can think of, these guys have dabbled in it. And we find ourselves in a very interesting place with Converge right now in the year of our Lord 2026, because it has been some time since we had the last true blue Converge record. Now, on this show, we did in fact cover the 2021 release, the incredibly targeted Jake Core collaboration between Converge and Chelsea Wolfe, a collaboration that feels so geared towards me, I have to continually remind myself I did not make that album up, and it is in fact real, and it does in fact kick ass. That being said, that was the last time Converge were truly active in an album sense, and while there has been kind of a tenuous promise about potentially more Blood Moon records on the horizon, the album before this was The Dusk in Us back in 2017, which means that we have more or less been waiting for a new Converge album for almost 10 years, which is a very long time, considering these guys have an output that is just utterly fucking unreal. Converge are one of those unimpeachable bands, those foundational sort of genre acts that it's really kind of hard to find fault with. Ever since they came onto the scene, I don't really technically count their debut Halo in a Haystack from 1994 to be their debut because it was, recorded in a cave with a box of scraps and barely sounds mixed and mastered these days. Their real debut was in Petitioning the Empty Sky in 1996. And ever since then, these guys have done nothing but crank out seminal release after seminal release. These guys, they are, in my opinion anyway, the most consistent metal band of all time. And that's not necessarily an easy flag to fly when you consider they're probably competing with bands like Judas Priest for that title, which have also an incredibly legendary and incredibly diverse catalog. So, the really interesting thing, though, about this album, Love Is Not Enough, is that even you can kind of tell by the cover art that this feels like Converge scaling things back and going a bit more back to basics. Because in the 2010s, they really evolved their sound with the two albums they released in that decade, All We Love We Leave Behind and The Dusk in Us, which are two very different albums that delve into sludge metal and post-hardcore and a lot of fringe tendencies that Converge didn't really make their name making music like that, even though those are two very beloved albums. I adore both, and in fact, The Dusk in Us is probably my favorite Converge album, period. But I would be willing to bet there is a certain stripe of Converge and metalcore fan that has kind of been waiting for them to release an album like this since 2009's Axe to Fall, which means that there's a good amount of people who have been waiting a long time to have a no frills, pedal to the metal, no bullshit kind of release in the way that Love Is Not Enough is. And frankly, I have to boringly report that these guys still, in fact, got it. These dudes who were in their 50s at this rate, and I assume will just keep on going because they haven't lost a step, they're here, they're back, and naturally, they are as good as they have ever been. Love Is Not Enough was very cheekily released on the 14th of February, Valentine's Day. Haha, love theme, silly. Haha. Never let it be said that these guys don't have a sense of humor. But what we get on here is just kind of seeing where Converge are from a writing standpoint and a sonic standpoint, in that this isn't necessarily just a 2000 style Converge album. There is some like atmospheric stuff that they play with on this record, and I would say that the writing on this really resembles the more recent Converge albums, and less the kind of animal lizard brain shit that you would see on their early, more mathcore centric releases like Jane Doe and You Fail Me, the ones that really put them on the map and made them legendary. But Love Is Not Enough here, this just kind of gives everyone a little bit of everything, but without really sacrificing much. This is a 31-minute record, and frankly, the whole thing rips. But the second half of this album, I would be willing to say this is some of the best music Converge have ever even put out. That said, Jen, I'm curious to see where you came into with all this, just because I don't know your history with Converge. For all I know, this is your first Converge album, which honestly, not a bad choice considering what the band is actually doing on here. But I mean, I got you into Knocked Loose and shit. I know that you're fucking more with heavy stuff. I'm slowly indoctrinating you into the cult, the true cult metal. And how did you find this exactly? I don't know what it's like to come into Converge, a band this big and important at this point, and just sort of see what they're all about. So, how'd you find this exactly?
I find it incredibly inviting and incredibly energetic to come into an album from a band that has such a large reputation, but immediately being able to grasp the full vision of this record in particular, even though it's my first Converge record. Because you're right, they're stripping things back, they're going back to basics. It's a very straightforward metalcore, mathcore, punk, sludge adjacent record that's all about removing the thrills, or the frills, I should say, removing the frills, in order to have the most direct engagement with the themes that are driving the album forward possible. I've just been thinking about, the possibility that love is not enough. And it's a very straightforward concept, right? That you have to accept the notion that you're in the face of something that's blind optimism, and love without action can suppress or can allow you to progress through. And this is a record about exploring what happens once you've realized that action is necessary in the face of something, whatever it is that's inspiring the action. The band is a little loose with the cause of marching forth on most of these songs, which isn't a bad thing. And where they do get into particulars on this record, I think they do so very well. But the whole album has this propulsion forward of the lead singer exploring the nuances of being called into action by some sort of external stimuli and the recollections that you have to do once you've realized that you've been called into action. In a way, this has a lot of kinship with the Aesop Rock album that we talked about last year. I was thinking
Yeah.
about that one a lot. Not Black Hole Superette, the other one. I heard it's a mess there too,
Hmm.
which Aesop on that album is rapping a lot about recollecting on the uninitiated moments. And this is an album about reflecting on the newly initiated moments of the psyche, where you have to realize what was always an obstacle in the path to better things for yourself and the people around you. And all of that is delivered by, God, just feet cannot be still ass riffs and flows and melodies on this, where by the time we get to Distract and Divide, which is just a minute and a half of what I can only describe as pure mosh pit sorcery, this
I love it.
album this album really comes into form as being about action, even when that action is taking in the words of the band and allowing them to kind of move through you. There's something really special here on the way that Converge have taken a really straightforward approach to making a record about realizing that you need to do something and reflecting on what maybe got in your way before then.
Absolutely. I think the most impressive thing about this album is, at the end of the day, the fact that every single musician contributing to this project still sounds as good as they've ever sounded, but also just as like young as they've ever sounded. Like when you do an album like this and you call back to an earlier point in your career and you're like really aiming aesthetically for something, you run the risk of time passing in between these moments and allowing it to be sort of, the newer record that no matter how well you execute it, your age might just inherently hold you back a little bit. But the thing is that Jacob Bannon, as a lyricist and as a vocalist, as a performer, this dude still sounds like an angry, pissed off 20-year-old who just, who is just absolutely letting the mic fucking have it. There is a decent amount of cleans on here, but his screams are just as nasty as they have ever been. But I do love his cleans as well, just because they have such an urgency to them. There is actually kind of a Brian Garris knocked loose, like immediacy of just like, oh God, please help me sort of intonation in the clean vocals on this record that I think add a lot of urgency to the album, that add a lot to the momentum of the record. And, there's lots of lyrical moments that stand out to me. Like the opening on here, Bannon has that moment where he's got the truth is never wrong, time is never right, we can't see the past if we close our eyes. It's
Yeah, there's a
really
lot of really
catchy.
good clean moments on this vocally that
Hmm.
really shine through.
I was very, very impressed with all of that. And naturally, the other eternal sort of pillar of Converge's strength as a band is, of course, Kurt motherfucking Blue, both on the production end and on the guitar end. Jen, I'm assuming you probably don't know a huge amount about Kurt Blue. This man is like the biggest fucking dude I've ever seen in my life. He has to custom build his guitars because his hands are so fucking large that he can't do normal shit with normal guitars. And basically, this guy is the metalcore producer, not just Converge, not just their various side projects. This guy has been working in this scene and producing for bands like, I mean, Every Time I Die has an album that I believe is produced by him, and like a bunch of albums in this scene have been like, ushered and stewarded by his incredible versatility as a producer. Sometimes he goes for a more atmospheric thing, sometimes he goes for more impact. Here we're getting a little bit of both, but this is mostly just a muscular effort, even though we are getting moments of just sort of pure atmosphere like we would find on All We Love We Leave Behind, on songs like Beyond Repair, which is sort of the transition point of the first half of the album to the second half. And the other standout performers on here, Nate Newton, who is notable for being one of the main guys in Cave In, a band we have also talked about very favorably in the past. Their 2022 record, in fact, being one of the best metal releases of this decade. And I was a little worried that, like, because Nate Newton was a little bit more focused on some other projects, that maybe he would be a little less involved with Converge, but that does not appear to be the case whatsoever. The bass work on this album is a steady, nasty little growl. Somehow Kurt Ballou was able to find pockets in these mixes for the bass to just really rumble. And I love that shit, man. But the best part about this, from like a just compositional level, to me, Ben Collar on the drums on this album is just incinerating the kid. Oh my
Yes.
God. This dude fill after fill after fill, galloping, thrashing fucking sections that just, oh man, it is the exact kind of stuff that, like, I swear to God, I was at work last night, literally doing the fucking like Walter Sobchak, like, oh yeah, in the fucking car going along to this, just because again, it's like you said, you can't really find it within yourself to sit still if you start really fucking with this album. And in the second half, like the first half of the album does a really good job at kind of ingratiating you into the not more surface level themes, but just the kind of things that are on the band's mind at the moment. Things like technology being this avenue for people with power to manipulate others and ultimately drive away our sense of connection. There is a sort of pressing element on here that we like love is not enough being this kind of it's not just a traditionally romantic context. It's love in every single context. It's friendship, it's family, it's all of these things that are being neutered by the modern age in the awful ways in which this is. I mean, fucking Jesus, go on any news site and you'll be like, yeah, that's why they're writing about this. I fucking get it. But it kind of does this piecemeal, and then afterwards, it feels like the band really take an effort to sort of thematically focus in the second half and just sort of do like a reverse spiral thematically. You've got a song like Amon Amok, which, I mean, it's actually a very similar song to some of the stuff in the first half, but this is like the slower, doomier, sludgier song. And of course, we've got a song like Gilded Cage, which is talking a little bit more about like, just the wealth inequality and financial strata, but it's done so in a way that doesn't make you feel like the messaging or talking points is getting in the way of actual effective lyricism. But the place in which this album really just kind of lays you flat and drives everything home to me is the final two songs, Make Me Forget You and We Were Never the Same. Not only are
Yes.
these just two of the absolute best fucking Converge songs, full stop, very, very like freely admitting that I think that this is legitimately some of the band's best work. But writing wise, this hits. Like Make Me Forget You is this thing that like I kind of like the way they play with cheekily with the title here because it's sort of an inversion of just like you will not be able to make me forget you is really the point of the song, and it's just about cherishing everything that you love but using that as motivation to actually take action, to actually have agency, just because for as nice as sentiments like, don't fight what you hate, save what you love are, we are kind of long past the point where stuff like that is particularly useful. That kind of stuff is, it's nice when you have only a bunch of, easily solvable neoliberal problems in front of you and not the modern hellscape that we currently face. Converge have always been a band that have never been afraid to blend the existential with the political in a way that has always felt urgent, like the closer on the Dusk in Usk, the album before this, technically, Reptilian, is just very blanketly a song about U.S. intervention in the Middle East and, I mean, how fucking evil it all is. And this is shit we gotta have right now. Like you need big, angry, thoughtful, righteous fucking music. And this fits the moment like a fucking glove.
Yeah, We Were Never the Same and Make Me Forget You is just this perfect little couplet of songs. I love the build that accompanies the transition between them. And
Mm.
then, yeah, just that little repetition of the line on Make Me Forget You of just, I never said what I meant to hit so
Mm.
hard. You really feel it by the end. And yeah, this album has a ton of lyrical highlights. I was more so getting deep in the lyrics of this than the sonic quality. So I'm glad you're able to bring a little bit more of that piecemeal, taking apart the instrumentation and describing it, because I'm much more lingering on the lyrics, like the lyrics of Distract and Divide are just
Hmm.
perfect. Complacency spreads as technology thrives, predation by proxy arming all sides. That's such a great turn of
Damn.
phrase.
Fuck.
Predation by proxy is such a great turn of phrase.
Yes.
I feel like it describes so many things about the technological landscape and what the new forms of technological communication have done to society and practices of communication. I love it. I really, really love it. And then the way that To Feel Something explores this kind of sensation seeking behavior that
Hmm.
ultimately ends in this feeling of paralysis in the face of the true fear that you spent all that time chasing. There's a great irony there, but it's tragic to hear the full vision of the song kind of come into form. And I just loved the way that this album continually explored the need to understand action, not just to take it. Like, what is the purpose of this new thing that I feel like I need to do, actually? Because there's a lot of moments on this album where it's kind of confessional about being passive. Make Me Forget You is kind of about this. Gilded Cage is kind of about this. Force Meets Presence is a little bit about this. There are all these moments where the protagonist is kind of reflecting negatively on moments where they saw but didn't act. And so, what is causing what I'm seeing now to make me act? Like, why was this the breaking point? It's always a good question to ask yourself. And I feel like this album does a great job of bringing that moment of being into its narrative qualities, which I really, really enjoyed.
Absolutely. There has simply never been a better time to get into a band like Converge because they're approaching the status and size of a band with a discography and influence, a reputation that makes them kind of intimidating to be like, where do I even start? How do I even know I'm gonna like these guys? Like, where do I, it's there's a lot of baggage that comes with being an institution of a band like Converge are. But frankly, this is a really easy way to get in with it because I mean, as you said, you've been able to appreciate this with such like little experience with the band in the past. If you like this, basically just go chronologically because you're starting out in a place that's similar to now and you get to see how they evolve because I mean like not to be pithy about it, but like I consider Converge to be like the Radiohead of extreme metal. Like these guys are relentless innovators. They have never ever stopped or held themselves back and they've never allowed themselves to bow to the whims of anything other than the music they want to make. And the fact that they are still out here, still doing it, still doing this as well as it is, man, like Converge at this rate feel like they're gonna outlive fucking me. Which, you know what, I'm perfectly content with that because we got to have bands like these dudes, and I'm glad that people are digging this as well. Like this seems to be another critical smash hit home run for them, and good. I hope that they can after this. I hope that we get an announcement for Blood Moon 2, which I will be very very normal about. Thumbs way the fuck up for this.
Majorly.
Absolutely. Major thumbs up. And now, let's transition real quick to our next record. We are going to be talking about Casino by Baby Keem, otherwise known as Hakeem Jamal Carter Jr. Wanted to introduce him as his own thing because Baby Keem, y'all know who he is. Everybody pretty much knows who Baby Keem is at this point because what everyone says about him? He's Kendrick Lamar's cousin. Kendrick Lamar this, Kendrick Lamar that. He was on the Melodic Blue a bunch of times. You know, Kendrick's on this record. And, I don't necessarily think that people are wrong to do that just because obviously notable. And, we're in a time when the music industry and the music populace is very cognizant of the idea of Nepo babies and, connections that just sort of like get people into places and, maybe they deserve to, maybe they don't. But the thing is that I would argue that Casino here, we really see Baby Keem coming into his own as his own artist because the Melodic Blue kind of
I
feels
want to
like
say
a
it. Are you going to say it? I want to say it.
took
Put
me a
another one on
second.
the whiteboard, ladies and gentlemen. It's another hip hop maturation album.
we gotta like actually sit down and do like a tally for all of this shit at this rate. But like really, the melodic blue when it came out, I remember so vividly that we only kind of like mentioned that when it came out on the show, because Riley gave it a spin. And I remember so vividly exactly what they said about it, which was this album kind of sucks ass, but I really like it. And like going back to the melodic blue, I'm like, I kind of sort of agree. Like I don't necessarily think the album sucks ass, but like there is a unserious quality to that album that leads you to just kind of treat it as a lower stakes project. There's moments on there that I really really love, but it's an inconsistent record. So I guess with the new album on the horizon, what I wanted from Baby Keem was really just I want to know what are y'all about, man? Because we had moments on that album where, he got a little bit more emotional or he talked about himself a little bit more and he really felt like he was trying to impress upon everyone his style because he's a very distinct voice. He uses his voice in very distinct ways. Like I would say that if you get filtered by shit like Danny Brown, Baby Keem is going to be a tough sell for you. But on Casino, I gotta say, I was kind of delightfully blown away by this because we have an album that is short, it's succinct, but it is packed with moments that I do appreciate because, like, it's kind of like I said a couple of months back in that I love that Baby Keem does not really seem like he feels compelled to be a super duper serious rapper all the time because of his proximity to his cousin. It feels like he just wants to carve out his own lane. And that's more or less what Casino is about carving his own lane and finding himself and who he is and expressing that and making it known to everybody. And we get a surprisingly thoughtful record that's still also full with a lot of colorful and silly and just interesting little moments. So, Jen, what did you feel about the melodic blue? How did that inform your take here? And how'd you walk away from Casino? Because this seems to be an album that not everybody is able to get fully on the wavelength on. And I don't necessarily blame them for that. But I feel like if you push past the initial inclination you might have to be like, some of these like delivery styles, some of this flow, I don't know if this works for me. If you push past it, I think there's something real special in Casino.
The thing about Baby Keem is that I was introduced to his music with the release of Family Ties, which is a horrible entry point, especially like being there in the moment when that song dropped
Hmm.
was a terrible time to learn who Baby Keem is because
Mm-hmm.
for everybody that was in the orbit of that moment, that was the moment that Kendrick made his return after Damn. And
Mm-hmm.
so that sucked up a lot of the oxygen in the room around what should have been Baby Keem's first legit album cycle. And I was similarly underwhelmed by the release of Melodic Blue, some of which I extend the blame to, yeah, the way that that album was beginning to be rolled out of like, Baby Keem is here. He's Kendrick Lamar's cousin. He's got the Kendrick Lamar cosign. He's gonna make a Kendrick Lamar level album, which is not a claim that anybody made, actually.
Mm-mm.
But it's the kind of thing that you start to think in your head when you hear a song like Baby Ties. Excuse me, that's too good to cut out.
No, that's good. I like that.
When you hear a song like Family Ties, and that's your introduction to the artist behind Family Ties, the Melodic Blue is not the album that you expect to hear. But spending time getting on the wavelength of Baby Keem, I feel like I have a much better understanding of him than I ever did through anybody that ever tried to present him as like a legitimate contender for a protege of Kendrick, which has never
Mhm.
been Keem's intention. And
No.
anybody telling you that is not really paying attention to what he's actually doing here, which is that on Casino, especially, Baby Keem is going in a much more pop-centric direction that honestly puts this more in line with GNX than anything that Kendrick has ever done.
Yeah.
But as far as the older West Coast influences that drive GNX with the hyper modern in a way that only feels really relevant to its own orbit that defines so much of GNX's production. Casino feels like so much of a tribute to the mid 2010s hybrids of R&B and trap that were really becoming popular, like that one Chris Brown song Show Me, which I
Oh
hate.
God,
But if
yes,
you
awful. But
but if you
I
pick
get what you
apart the
mean.
elements of it, is exactly what Keem is trying to do.
Hmm.
Bringing in some Dirty South influences, pop rap flows with these great R&B hooks like on Sex Appeal.
Oh God, I love that hook so fucking much. It's so good, so good.
Too much sex appeal.
Too much sex appeal.
It's
Too much sex
great.
appeal.
We're too white for this.
You
I
know,
um
that's the thing though. I feel like you gotta at least give yourself over to the experience with this one, just because there are a lot of moments on here that you should definitely take very seriously because the writing is very emotional and earnest, and Baby Keem is clearly like reaching into his past a lot on here. But there are moments on here that are equally as frivolous as stuff on the Melodic Blue, but that doesn't mean that they're not really, really enjoyable.
You have on here like Casino is Keem's attempt at a mixtape era banger, like a
Mhm.
bonfire level. This is the one that as soon as people start to hear the beat, the crowd goes wild type of
It's
song, which
that
Baby Keem
beat is
hasn't.
deep fucking fried. That shit sounds like a borderline rage beat, and I kind of fucking love it.
Yeah, it sounds like a classic Rage beat where it just kind of sounds like a Super Nintendo game that got lost in the ether. But
Yeah.
once Keem is putting his vocals over it, you completely understand like why the song sounds like this. And I love that
100%.
music that sounds like old video game soundtracks are just normal now. Like every,
Yes.
not everybody, but there's so many artists that have a song that sounds like, oh, this sounds like a SNES synth track.
Yeah. A PS1 sound font ass beat. And it's positive. Very, very positive.
Yeah, and then you have just like great melodic flows, like the hook of the birds and the bees
Oh,
of the
I
like
love that hook
Monday,
too.
Tuesday. All that stuff is great. It sounds very early
Baby Keem.
2000s. And let me ask you about this.
Hmm.
I know you. We are big fans of when Kendrick Lamar gets a little silly with it. What did you think of his presence on this album?
Him on Good Flirts is something else. I both really like this addition to the song just because, again, you getting to hear Kendrick in this particular mode, especially now after two albums like GNX and Mr. Morale, where, a lot of the subject material, frankly, is just very heavy, very difficult to grapple with stuff. Even on GNX, which is his poppiest album by a mile, he's still grappling with some pretty important stuff. This, on the other hand, it really feels like he gets an excuse to kind of cut back, and it's like you really get to hear like Section 80 Kendrick again, and there's something really nostalgic about that to me as somebody who, again, like takes me right back to my college days when I was bumping fucking Section 80 every time I got in the car because ADHD was at the top of the list on my music library, and my car would automatically play what was at the top of that list every time I got in the car. And I never really complained because it's fucking ADHD. Are you fucking kidding me? But on this song, I both like this edition, but also very willing to acknowledge it is the weakest part of the song. I kind of think that the hook, Baby Keem on like the first part of it, and the kind of like sung vocals are like really solid stuff. And then Kendrick comes in and he does this thing, and it's good. But I'm also like, and paradoxically, I like
We
the
we hear
song.
just we hear just Kendrick bouncing off of himself for a little too long on this
Yeah,
song.
exactly. Like I'm actually kind of impressed. Like to me, it feels like, and I don't want to come across as though I'm a fucking what do they call him these days? A K-bot stan and trying to give the man too much credit. But it does feel like Kendrick on this record sorta scales himself back and lets Baby Keem be the star of the show. Like he doesn't come in onto the track with the express intent of stealing it from Baby Keem. And I actually really appreciate that because Baby Keem really feels like he is stepping it up in terms of lyricism and in terms of storytelling. Like you start this off and No Security for, being a sub 2 minute song is like really urgent and emotional, and I was just like, whoa, I did not anticipate being this invested in the narrative of Baby Keem all of a sudden. But holy shit, because songs like No Security, songs like I Am Not a Lyricist, and songs like No Blame are like I don't have to like make a case for these songs because I think they're just flatly fucking amazing. Like they are legitimately affecting emotional songs that talk about Baby Keem's history with people like his mother on the closer and his relationship and trying to kind of rationalize her behavior that was not always super kind or, particularly loving towards him, but he is reckoning with it and coming to a conclusion where he's able to kind of forgive and forget and move forward. And then there's like I Am Not a Lyricist is honestly kind of stunning. Like I was really kind of laid flat by this shit because he makes his artistic intent so clear on here that he like I've never been more convinced that somebody is doing something for the love of the game than I have when I'm listening to this song because he's really just here to be himself, to add his voice to the current chorus of modern hip hop. And he's contextualizing that within how he sees himself, the industry at large, and even like there are moments on here where he's reckoning with the success that he's already been met with and how it's kind of already alienating him and how where he's trying to do things that push him in the right direction. Like how many bars are you going to get on other hip hop albums about a guy making positive life choices like drinking alkaline water? Like honestly, I heard that bar and I was like, you know what? I need some electrolytes too, Baby Keem. I'm gonna get right on that.
Self-care is baller culture.
Honestly, that's kind of what some of the moments on here are. And he still doesn't let that bog down the pace of the album. Like, again, you've got Casino, which is this real, just like, again, that deep fried beat at the very start of it is just this electric way to start. And then you get Birds and the Bees and Good Flirts, which are these a little bit more, again, R&B indebted cuts that just sort of continue the momentum along. And there's a lot of influence of like Chipmunk Soul on here, which is
Yeah.
just a direct straight arrow to my fucking heart, man. I love me a good Chipmunk Soul beat. It's a very easy way to get me in your corner. And he does it multiple times on here, and it's kinda awesome. Like the only time I feel like the album really like loses me, and it doesn't really ever lose me at all. I still think the moments that I'm about to mention are foundationally quite solid, are kind of like you implied, the moments where some of these songs kind of trail off structurally and just kind of last a little bit too long. Because the pace of this album, which is, 37 minutes, it's very brisk, but you kind of feel when some of the songs haven't been fully trimmed back to maybe the most efficiently designed version of themselves. Like the Kendrick part on Good Flirts does last a little bit long, and Circus Circus Freestyle is a very, again, robust, good song. It kind of checks every box, but it does feel like it covers topics that are already covered elsewhere on the album, and it just
Yeah,
kind of it feels like a run-on sentence of a song a little bit.
if it was just the second verse, I would be like, "Yep, that's perfect."
Completely agree. Completely agree.
A part of me, I guess I wanted to understand why Baby Keem likes making music that's a little bit silly.
Hmm.
And I think I got it by the time I went through this album a couple times because you have this perfect kind of triptych of No Security, I'm Not a Lyricist, and No Blame, where
Mm.
he's fully articulating, like, yeah, I'm doing this because I love it, and I'm doing this to give relief to struggling people. I love this, like, he gets this Andre 3000 tone in his voice towards the end of
Dude,
I'm Not a Lyricist, where
it's
he's just like ramp.
crazy how similar he sounds. I was like, whoa, you had this in your back pocket this whole time? This is crazy.
And he's just like rambling about being a struggling kid, about being a runaway, about moving through the foster system, about sleeping under bridges,
Mm-hmm.
all this crazy shit that I can't even begin to understand. But it all doubles back into this just this want to make something that quiets all that struggle for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Even when it gets a little bit conceited, even when it gets a little bit hedonistic, like on the sex appeal is a hedonistic moment.
Oh
Dramatic
yeah.
Girl is very silly with it,
Dude,
but it's his attempt at making a Tame Impala style pop
it's
song,
it's
and it's
crazy that
great.
Dramatic Girl is like, I heard that and I was like, I see a universe in which this is like a smash hit. Like it feels like it's got that kind of power behind it. Like the hook on this is just fucking it demolishes. It's awesome. It's unexpected. Like I don't think anything in hip hop right now sounds like Dramatic Girl, which, could, sink or swim you on the album as a whole, but to me, I was just like the Andre 3000 comparison is perfectly on point because the album I kept thinking about when listening to this was The Love Below, the exclusive Andre 3000 side of the Outkast double album. Not just because he adopts like flows and intonations that really do sound like Andre, but because, I mean, go back and listen to Andre 3000. That's also a dude who likes to make really silly sounding music. That's an album that, for every bit as it owes to hip hop, it also owes to like the weirder, eccentric, psychedelic Prince stuff. And like Baby Keem clearly likes this kind of stuff and is incorporating it in ways that I think are really savvy.
I believed in the hype of Baby Keem. Like I believed in the potential.
Mm,
This is where I believe in Baby Keem. Like
I completely agree with you.
this album with all of its flaws, I'm still completely bought in to Baby Keem as a must need to track voice in the game for his career right now.
And like, it's kind of necessary because we've sort of been preoccupied with talking about the fact that hip hop is in a really good place right now. Like, it's really kind of found its footing over the course of the last year. And this year, it's really continuing strong with that stride. But the lack of really definitive young blood in the genre is mildly concerning. But like, Baby Keem is over here fucking 3 years younger than me. And he's out here and he's doing interesting stuff. And yeah, it's not going to get along with everyone, but I think that I kind of like the fact that this album and Baby Keem is a little bit alienating, just because, again, we need to have people who are going and conquering frontiers that other people are too cowardly to pursue. And like I of course want people who are, foundationally solid. We've got the sort of new up and coming like we've got people like Doichi, we've got people like Glorilla who are really sort of putting their best foot forward when it comes to the particular hip hop that they make, but that's still very much firmly entrenched within what we all know and understand as commercial hip hop. To me, this is kind of expanding the borders a little bit. It feels like there's potential to even go a little bit further. And like, it's really fun to just see someone with this level of potential and to see it fulfilled because after this, I don't know, man. I kind of feel like I'm really excited for this dude to go places.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, Keem is at a very interesting place because we spend a lot of time bouncing back and forth between and it feels like we have in the past year since we started doing this show. We keep bouncing back and forth between the elder statesman continuing great strides like Eclipse, Kendrick, De La Soul, Nas, all stuff that we talked about recently. Even Tyler is heading towards elder statesman status at this
Look,
point,
Cole is
despite his moving and
retired.
shaking.
The I know we have voiced our ambivalence to the big three concept, but if Cole is gone, that spot's gotta be filled by somebody, and frankly, it's Tyler and nobody else in terms of people that big right now.
But the middle zone between the elder statesman wanting to drop new classics and the internet underground that we know is kind of wishful thinking to assume it will break through. When I'm listening to like Dochi and Glorilla, I'm listening to people that have already very clearly mastered a certain kind of craft.
Very
And
much so.
it's nice with an artist like Baby Keem, where I don't really know where he's gonna go next, but I'm excited to see it happen. And I want to
And,
see Keem figure out what his niche exactly is. And that's not to say that there aren't moments on this album that are going to linger with me like forever as the years go by. Like there's some songs on this that I never want to get out of my rotation as far as like, yeah, the best of 2020s hip hop. Some of the
mhm,
songs are definitely on there. But I
mhm.
feel like Keem still has room to grow while being in a place in the industry where he's going to get a certain kind of mainstream attention that might honestly benefit him. And it feels good to
Absolutely.
say that about somebody because there are plenty of rappers who I love who I don't want anywhere near mainstream coverage because I think it would just
Yeah.
make the environment around them worse, bar none. But Keem is a person who I feel like the more that people pay attention and the more that people let him kind of mess around and work his stuff out, the more interesting stuff that we're going to get out of it. And so I love that we have him where he is, and I love that this album kind of cemented me as being a person who now wants to see what his next steps are going to be.
Oh, I'm completely with you on that because I think that carrying over so much of the idiosyncrasies from the melodic blue tells me that he is, I mean, completely unafraid. And the most appealing thing about Baby Keem on this album, other than him being like a surprisingly dexterous performer in ways that I really wouldn't have predicted just based on what we've heard before this, it's really just the fact that he's really earnest. He just seems like again, he's doing it for the love of the game, and when he says it, I really fucking believe him. There's no like attempt to obscure, there's not a lot of like, he's not really indulging in the same theatrics that his cousin is currently indulging in, which, is fine. I want Kendrick Lamar to keep doing silly theater kid shit like he has been because that's my wavelength. I get it. But I also kind of want people to break from the pack. I want people to carve their own lane, and it just feels increasingly difficult to be able to do that, especially again, people like Tyler feel like they're the only guys who are able to do that because they have mastered the walking the razor's edge of their uniqueness and their commercial appeal. And it just kind of seems like Baby Keem doesn't really care. He's just kind of like, I'm just going to be out here and I'm just going to do my thing, and you can be here along for the ride or not. Whatever. I'm just going to do this. But as long as he's making songs where it really feels like, when he's talking about stuff like, his grandma and stuff like that, I really feel that emotional pull that you get when you listen to younger, hungry rappers that just need to prove themselves. And to me, this is a runaway success of proving oneself.
Wonderful stuff. Big thumbs up for Baby Keem.
Big thumbs up. Hip hop is good, man. Hip hop is alive and fucking
It's
well.
not even
February.
March.
It's
It's not even
fucking
March.
February when we're recording this. How? This has been a banner year for hip hop already. What is happening? Keep it coming, man. I'm here.
I'm
I'm
loving
here
it.
for it.
We're getting that Denzel album soon.
We are. I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
Fuck. And Denzel's already been on our radar for, doing the thing. So, hell yeah, man. That is going to be it for this episode of Jams and Tea. Stay tuned in the immediate future. We're going to be dropping all kinds of stuff, and we will see you then. And until then, rock over London, rock on Chicago, cover girl, easy, breezy, beautiful. I love that there's an ellipsis at the end of that. Like, how do I verbalize that, L'Oreal? Like, how do I do that? Whatever.